Welcome back, folks, to another edition of WrestleRant, where I review pay-per-views from the WWE Network for your viewing pleasure. For the last few weeks, with it being the road to WrestleMania, I've been watching past WrestleManias that I'd yet to watch, including WrestleMania 17, WrestleMania 19, and just this past week in WrestleMania 20. A whopping 5 hours long, was able to get through the entire thing, and hoping to watch WrestleMania 21 and maybe even WrestleMania 24 before WrestleMania 30 this Sunday. Not sure how much time I have because I'm pretty busy due to the WrestleMania season and a lot of assignments due for a lot of classes that I'm taking, and of course all that kind of stuff, all school stuff. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to have time to watch WrestleMania 24, but I'm hoping, and if so, WrestleMania 21 and WrestleMania 24 respectively. Hopefully I can have up a review of both shows before WrestleMania 30 on Sunday. And I'll also be getting to the older WWE, WWF, WCW, ECW pay-per-views at a later date. And of course, if you want to leave a suggestion for a pay-per-view that you want me to review, you can tweet me on Twitter at WrestleRant, contact me on Facebook at Graham Jason Matthews, leave a comment below. Any of the following options are fine with me. Just leave a suggestion. Hopefully I can get to that pay-per-view once I'm done with the WrestleMania pay-per-views after Sunday. So without further ado, let's start to reviewing WrestleMania 20, the 20th anniversary of the premier pay-per-view, a whopping 5 hours long, as I said before. It dragged on a little bit, of course, and this was before the whole pre-show concept. This year's WrestleMania will be 6 hours long in total. I'm not sure if they'll have a post-show. They haven't confirmed that yet, but this year's WrestleMania will have a 2-hour pre-show, and technically you don't really count that, but this was before they had the pre-show, so I can see why they went 5 hours. They had 12 matches on the card. Some were better than others, of course, but I'm going to review them for you right now. The opening matchup pitted John Cena against the then United States champion, the Big Show. Big Show had been U.S. champion for about 5 or 6 months at this point. John Cena, this is his WrestleMania debut. 10 years later, he's facing Bray Wyatt, also in the process of putting another star over, so it could be the circle of life, so to speak. But nonetheless, this is a fun opening matchup. It just blew my mind that people were chanting Cena's name when he came out initially, and he cut a very good promo, too, before the matchup, just rapping, doing all of his Thugonomic stuff, his Dr. Thugonomic shtick at the time. It was very over with the fans. They were chanting his name, a sight that you wouldn't see at WrestleMania ever again. I'm not sure about WrestleMania 21. Like I said, I haven't watched that yet. We'll be watching it soon. But even still, I thought that was hilarious. But it was very cool to see how John Cena was, how over he was at that point in time when he wasn't being shoved down our throats. Big Show played his part well, and it was a fun match for what it was. John Cena used the brass knuckles to pick up the victory after 2 FUs to win his first United States Championship. So it made for a very cool moment that would be repeated the following year with the WWE title victory for him and all the other championship wins that he would pick up at WrestleMania in the years to follow. But even still, though, a very good matchup with Cena defeating the Big Show to win his first U.S. Championship. I thought it was a good opener. With the new champion being crowned, the only new champion crowned on the show except for the main event. So I thought that was pretty cool, the way that they kind of did it. The opening match and the ending match are the most important, and they kind of reinforced that here. So a nice opening matchup. I thought it was a good way to kick off the show and set the tone for the rest of this WrestleMania. Up next, we had a Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match at the World Tag Team Championships, the first of 2 Fatal 4-Way Tag matches on this show. It pitted the current World Tag Team Champions Booker T and Rob Van Dam against La Resistance, Team 3D, or the Dudley Brothers, of course, at the time in WWE, and who were the other 2? Garrison Cade and Mark Jindrak. The match itself, you would think, would go longer because there were 4 teams involved, but it didn't go all that long at all. It only lasted maybe 5-7 minutes in total. I'm not exactly sure what the times were. But even still, though, I think it was a decent tag team match. It wasn't a bad match at all, and everyone was able to get in at some point or another. But given the fact there was only 4 teams, and this wasn't elimination style either, it was just a 1 pinfall or 1 submission and it's over. And Booker T and Rob Van Dam ended up retaining the tag team championships. The ending was nice. I like the flurry of finishers that we always get at the end of every multi-man tag team match or whatever. That was pretty cool at the end of this matchup. But aside from that, I didn't really care for this match all that much. I mean, like I said, I think it was a bit of a disappointment because you would think it would have gone longer because there were 4 teams involved. And the tag team champions retained. And I guess Booker T and RVD won the tag team championships together only a few weeks prior to this, so it wasn't really time to change to have the titles change hands just yet. But even still, though, I thought it was an okay matchup that definitely could have been better, given the fact there were 4 teams involved. Up next, we had Christian versus Chris Jericho. Of course, everyone knows of the storyline going into this match. Jericho and Christian made a bet of who can nail, those are their words, not mine, nail Lita or Trish first. And I guess Jericho ended up falling for Trish. and Christian turned his back on Jericho, leading to a match between the two at WrestleMania, and Trish was falling for Jericho, only to turn her back on him and join Christian at the end of this match after Jericho got rolled up by Christian. He held the tights. Christian picked up the victory. It's probably his last big victory at WrestleMania. I don't think Christian has won at WrestleMania yet. I don't think he has, because he was at WrestleMania 21, lost Money in the Bank, wasn't there for 22, 23, or 24. 29, he was in Money in the Bank. 26 was in Money in the Bank. 27 didn't wrestle and hasn't wrestled since. So I guess this was his last, or first and last, big singles victory at WrestleMania, which is a shame given the star potential there. I think Christian should be utilized better, but nonetheless, a very, very good matchup between Christian and Jericho, reminiscent of the match from the year before between Jericho and Shawn Michaels, which was an amazing matchup. This one was very similar in that sense, just a lot of drama, a lot of good wrestling between these two Canadians. And like I said, Christian ultimately went over. Then after the matchup, Trish shocked the world by by slapping Jericho right across the face and going after Christian and leading off with him. So I thought that was a cool swerve, and I guess Trish and Christian obviously stuck together after a while after this, going into Backlash and a handicap match against Jericho and all that kind of stuff. But this was a very, very good storyline, something that, I know it's a love storyline, it's a soap opera kind of thing, but you got the key players in there. You get Trish Stratus in the role as the woman of this love triangle. You have her as the woman role. You have Jericho and Christian in there, who are both very good in their roles and excellent in the ring. You have all the pieces to the puzzle, which made it a great storyline. And hopefully WWE can learn from this stuff and make better undercard feuds in the future. I mean, this match was only third on the card and had a great backstory to it. You don't usually kind of see that stuff nowadays. Love triangles I'm not a huge fan of, but when done right with the right players in them, with like Trish, Christian, and Jericho, the Canadian Bermuda Triangle, so to speak, it can work out. It can be perfectly executed like the storyline was, and I really enjoyed this matchup, and it made for a solid undercard. So this was the first hour, I believe, of the undercard for WrestleMania. I thought it was a good first hour. It wouldn't continue to be that way for the rest of the show, but I thought it was a solid first hour of 5 hours for WrestleMania 20. The next matchup on the show was Evolution, Randy Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair against The Rock and Mick Foley, the reuniting Rock and Sock connection. Now, multiple different variables in this matchup. I had seen this matchup before, I think on demand about a year ago, when they were offering it for about $1 or something like that. So I watched it and I thought it was a good match. So I didn't skip through it here. I wanted to watch the WrestleMania in its entirety, regardless of whether I'd seen the matches before or not. But anyway, though, what I didn't see was the promo that Randy Orton cut earlier on in the night in the stairwell. I'm thinking, why is he standing in the stairwell with Batista and Flair? And they showed the video package, and I remember this moment too. I just didn't remember when it was from, when he kicked Mick Foley down the stairwell and punted him in the head, and kind of the precursor to when he would use the punt as his official finisher years later. Punted Mick Foley down the stairwell in Madison Square Garden, the same venue where this event took place. So the storytelling there was fantastic. And they also showed a video package of Mick Foley walking out on Randy Orton in a match, I think, for the Intercontinental Championship in December of 2003. So they referenced that. They referenced the return of The Rock and all the beatdowns and how Mick Foley was kind of the underdog in this entire thing. And it just really dawned on me while watching all these video packages just how much Mick Foley put Randy Orton over the course of this feud. He had him kicked down a stairwell, for one thing, so Mick Foley allowed him to do that. He put him over by walking out on him. That probably made Foley look weaker than it did make Orton look stronger, but nonetheless, Orton got the upper hand there. They beat down Rock and Sock Connection on multiple occasions going into WrestleMania, and then they ultimately went over here, Evolution did, and then even Randy Orton beat Mick Foley again at Backlash for the Intercontinental Championship, and all great matches too, but it just amazes me just how much Foley is willing to put someone else over, and he really did that with Randy Orton here, and he would later on to become a World Heavyweight Champion, so no surprise there. But even still, though, I really enjoyed this tag team match. It was an okay tag team match. It wasn't like great 5-star wrestling or anything. I think I really enjoyed it, though, for the entertaining antics from Ric Flair and The Rock, just doing each other's poses and signatures and taunts and all that kind of stuff, and Rock doing the signature strut of Ric Flair, and Ric Flair about to do the people's elbow to I think The Rock or either Mick Foley, I'm not really sure who it was. But even still, though, I thought it was a very fun matchup, very great way. The fact that it was fourth on the card was surprising to me, and I know we had other marquee matches on this show, but I just thought that was surprising given that this was The Rock's final matchup for about 7 years before he returned to the ring in Survivor Series 2011. And of course, they probably didn't know that at the time. But even still, though, I was surprised that they would have this star talent in The Rock, fourth on the card. Same thing with Mick Foley, his first match in 4 years. And I know he wasn't all that impressed with this matchup. I know he's gone on record in the past and said that this was not his best in-ring showing. But regardless, so I really enjoyed it. And Evolution ultimately went over, which was probably the best decision. Next matchup, we had Tori Wilson and Sable against Stacy Keibler and Miss Jackie in a Playboy gown, evening gown matchup. Pretty throwaway. I know some people are like, oh, the Divas division used to be a lot better 6-7 years ago. This was the women's division. I was really hoping, please let there be a women's championship match on the show. And thankfully there was, but this was trash though. I mean, I'm not going to complain about it, women in their evening gowns. I'm not going to complain about that at all. Don't get me wrong. But it was a sight to see. I'll say that much. But regardless, though, the match itself was pretty throwaway. It only lasted maybe like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. The wrestling itself was pretty garbage. So aside from that, it was a spectacle in more ways than one. But aside from that, it was pretty filler and pretty forgettable. Up next, we had a Cruiserweight Open for the Cruiserweight Championship, of course, featuring Chavo. I'm not going to list all the participants, but Chavo ultimately went over and retained his Cruiserweight Championship. I thought this was, early on, it was a boring matchup. They just had people, it was a gauntlet style, like someone goes in, beats one, that person's got beat, and then that person gets beat. And it was just like that for like 4 or 5 people. I'm like, what are they doing? This sucks. Then Jamie Noble finally went over maybe like, I think 3 or 4 people in a row, which was pretty cool. There were some pretty fun spots mixed in. Like the match itself overall, I thought was disappointing. Like early on, like they're just throwing people out there and people don't care about this at all. Just rapid-fire finishers. And you would think for a 5-hour show that they would give this match more time. This goes back to the World Tag Team title match earlier on in the show. I mean, this show was 5 hours long. You couldn't spare a few more minutes, like take something out like that stupid evening down matchup and give this matchup more time, or the tag team title match. That didn't make any sense to me. But even still, though, Chavo and Ray definitely delivered in the final few minutes of this matchup. And also before that, too, when Billy Kidman was in, hit a shooting star press, or attempted a shooting star press, his finisher at the time, long before Evan Bourne jumped off, not the top rope, but, yeah, it was the top rope, but not the top turnbuckle, to the outside, and I think hit 2 other people, maybe Nunzio and someone else. And he looked like he botched that, and he was holding his neck for a while after he hit that move. But that would make it the second year in a row that someone botched shooting star press right after Brock Lesnar. So I wouldn't attempt the shooting star press if I was Evan Bourne. I know he hit it perfectly at WrestleMania 26 in the Money in the Bank ladder match. But even so, though, just a string of bad luck for shooting star presses. But yeah, Chavo ultimately went over after cheating, after holding the tights of Rey Mysterio, or I think, who was with him at the time? Chavo Sr. was pretty cool. I think he was at ringside with him for that matchup. So Chavo Jr. and Chavo Sr., that was pretty cool. But even still, it was way too reminiscent of the year before when Rey Mysterio faced Matt Hardy for the Cruiserweight Championship. Rey Mysterio contending for the championship, check. Heel Chiefs to win, check. Via interference, check. So it was kind of the same thing as we saw the year before, but even still a fun matchup in the final few minutes. Aside from that, it was pretty forgettable. Of course, up next, the infamous match between Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. A terrible, terrible matchup, and probably the single worst WrestleMania match I've ever seen in my life, if not one of the worst matches in general that I've ever seen as a fan. But even still, though, this match was terrible. They didn't even hook up for, I think, maybe 5 minutes in or something like that, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was a special guest ref. And, of course, as the story goes, everyone knew by this point in time, especially the very passionate Madison Square Garden crowd, that Brock Lesnar and Goldberg were on their way out of the company. So they were going to treat them as such by booing them. And Goldberg, who was the face at the time, he got a pretty good reaction when he came out. But even he got booed. Even he got booed about halfway during the matchup. And the entire crowd was pretty much chanting for Stone Cold at the time. The entire matchup, it was hilarious. Just a chance. Of course, the match sucked itself, and it was a lot like Randy Orton versus John Cena. And that match was a lot better than this one, of course. But it was worth watching in the sense that the crowd made the matchup. They made it entertaining. Sometimes crowds can make matches in the sense that their reactions, without a good crowd, the matches will fail. They will fall flat. In this matchup, while it was terribly wrestled, if you can even call it that they wrestled, they pretty much brawled the entire time, just with a few finishers thrown in. After a good build-up, I watched the video package. It was very well built up, but the match itself was terribly executed. They just didn't have any chemistry at all. But even still, though, what was I going to say? The crowd can make the matchup. regardless of whether the match is good or bad, if you have an awesome crowd, they can make it worth watching. That was definitely the case here. After the matchup, Brock Lesnar flipped off the fans. I thought was hilarious, and then was on the receiving end of a Stone Cold Stunner, as was Goldberg. So at least that made up for the terrible, terrible matchup that preceded it. Up next, the WWE Tag Team Championship matchup, another 4-team matchup. It pitted, I can't even remember the teams, to be quite honest with you. I know Too Cool, Rikishi, and Scotty 2 Hotty were in it. Who else was in that matchup? I can't even remember. I think the Bashams, the Bashams, APA, Too Cool, and I think there was one other team. I can't remember who it was. Son of a bitch. Whatever. But even still, though, the fact that I can't remember who it was probably didn't make this match all that memorable. It was a good matchup. Same exact case as before. You have 4 teams involved, and you can't give them more time. I thought that was a bit ridiculous. I mean, why don't you give these guys more time to shine? I thought it was a bit ridiculous that they didn't allow this match to go any longer than they did. And again, the tag team champions retained after Rikishi. I think he hit his finisher or something. He sat on, I think, one of the Bashams or whoever it was to go over and to retain the WWE Tag Team Championship. So it was another case of like I said with the tag team title match earlier on, it was a decent matchup, but just it was boring up until the end, and you would think that it would get more time because there were 4 teams involved. And when you have that much time, you would think that the match would go a lot longer. So that was a bit of a disappointment. But regardless, like I said before, with 5 hours of pay-per-view, you would think they'd go a little bit longer. But anyway, up next we had Victoria versus Molly Holly. And like I said, didn't care for the other Divas matchup on the show, or the women's matchup, whatever. And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, this will be the saving grace of the women's wrestling on the show. And it really wasn't. Victoria and Molly, they had a decent matchup, but it didn't really last all that long. They weren't given time. The crowd didn't care all that much. And Victoria just went over like it was nothing. The finisher felt like it came out of nowhere. The match got no crowd reaction. Maybe it was because, I don't know, it wasn't even following Goldberg Lesnar. I mean, it was, but it wasn't immediately following. So I don't know, that was a bit weird. The match itself was a joke. I'm not a joke, but I mean, it wasn't as good as I expected it to be, I guess I should say. So it definitely didn't live up to my standards. Victoria just shaved the head of Molly Holly after the matchup, which was kind of sad to watch. I mean, you kind of feel bad for her to get her head shaved. I didn't know what really preceded this matchup and what Molly Holly did to earn this to get her head shaved. But even still, it was an okay matchup, but I thought it'd be a lot better than it was. But at least the Women's Championship was defended at WrestleMania, which couldn't have been said for the Divas Championship for the longest time up until this year. The final 3 matches pitted Eddie Guerrero against Kurt Angle for the WWE Championship. An excellent matchup. Eddie Guerrero, in the end, ended up loosening his boot. Kurt Angle, this is a very familiar sight. We've seen this replayed time and time again on WWE TV. But Eddie Guerrero loosens his boot. Kurt Angle applies the ankle lock. The boot slips off. Eddie Guerrero rolls up Angle for the victory by putting his feet on the rope and cheating in the process, and still your WWE champion. So this is another case. I mean, it was an excellent matchup. The only thing that I didn't understand going into this matchup was why they didn't wait to put the championship on Eddie Guerrero at WrestleMania. And maybe they didn't want to take away from Benoit's big title victory. And I know they wanted to close out the show with both guys holding world championships since they're best friends in real life, and of course. But even still, though, I think winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania would have been bigger than having him retain it. Although it was a great victory, very over, of course. But even still, though, I was just very surprised to see him retain the championship as opposed to win the title on this show. I don't know why they couldn't have waited until Brock Lesnar to do Lesnar versus Eddie at WrestleMania, or you had Angle win the championship from Lesnar and then do Angle versus Eddie on this show with Eddie as the challenger. I think that would have made this matchup a little bit more interesting, but aside from that, that's just, nitpicking things. But it was a great matchup regardless. Up next, we had Undertaker versus Kane. The really only highlight from this matchup was the fact that The Undertaker had his old persona. He brought back the Dead Man gimmick because he was the American Badass for the longest time. The match itself only lasted 7 minutes long. It felt like a match that you'd see on Raw or SmackDown. The match itself, it wasn't terrible, but it really was just kind of punching and kicking and all that kind of stuff. Taker and Kane have never had the best chemistry in the ring, so I never understand why people want to see these guys go at it again at WrestleMania, even after this matchup wasn't all that great. And Kane took 3 tombstones at WrestleMania. I think it was 15 or 14 or 13. I don't know, not 13. I don't know. Whatever WrestleMania was. I think it was WrestleMania 15. I don't know, but Kane took 3 tombstones on that show, kicked out of 2 of them, and on this show he takes 1 tombstone. It's over. So, I mean, that was a bit weird. But like I said, though, the only true highlight of this matchup was The Undertaker bringing back his dead man gimmick with Paul Bearer in tow, which is pretty cool as well. And then 10 years later, he's being inducted in the Hall of Fame, so that's pretty cool too. Probably not intentional, but awesome nonetheless. And of course, in the main event, Chris Benoit versus Triple H versus Shawn Michaels for the World Heavyweight Championship. An awesome, awesome matchup. By far the match of the night, and one of the best matches at WrestleMania I've ever seen. Chris Benoit was the underdog here. I mean, Shawn Michaels was over as well, but everyone really wanted to see Benoit win the World Championship, and he did not disappoint after locking in the cripple crossface on Triple H for a solid few minutes. Triple H finally tapped out to the big ovation of the crowd. Chris Benoit, your new World Heavyweight Champion. Just great chemistry between all three of these guys. And HBK and Triple H went on to continue their feud, going into Bad Blood a few months later. And this is 2-year-long feud between Triple H and Shawn Michaels. So they had the history there. Benoit, the Royal Rumble winner, was kind of the odd man out, but nonetheless still emerged victorious as the World Heavyweight Champion. So I thought that was a great way to go off of WrestleMania, with Benoit and Eddie both holding the World Championships respectively, and then celebrating to go off the show. So I thought that was an amazing finish to what was rather a good show. I think I enjoyed WrestleMania 19 more than I enjoyed WrestleMania 20, if only because the entire card was solid for WrestleMania 19, in my opinion. For this show, only the two top championships matches delivered, which are the most memorable from this show. Undertaker vs. Kane was complete throwaway. The two tag team title matches were okay, but forgettable. Same thing with the women's matches. Goldberg versus Lesnar was terrible. Although the crowd reaction was very funny, so I would go back to watch that match, if only just for the chance. And the only other real matches on the show that stood out to me, of the undercard especially, Cena versus Show was cool. Cena winning the U.S. Championship was a nice moment. Christian versus Jericho was an excellent matchup. Go back and check that out, of course. And Evolution versus Rock and Sock was a fun match, too. Everything else just kind of felt like filler and fell flat. So I think the only real issue with this show was that it felt like a 3-hour Raw that we get nowadays, and that it felt like it went too long. And they made up for the empty time by putting in filler matches and trying to squeeze everyone on the card for WrestleMania 20, which is kind of what they're doing this year with WrestleMania 30, so you would think they would learn from their mistakes. But overall, though, a good WrestleMania, not terrible, not amazing. I think WrestleMania 19, in my opinion, was better, but still a very good WrestleMania. So like I said before, if you have any suggestions for any pay-per-views you want me to watch, especially WrestleManias, make sure to hit me in the comment section below or on Facebook and Twitter, and the links below as well. Thanks for subscribing, and this is GSM, signing out. Till next week, guys.